The prayer this morning will be offered by the General Lady representing Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, 1 year ago today, my strong, beautiful mother passed away just 5 weeks after the death of my dad. So on the eve of this personal, somber anniversary, I hope you'll let me offer some personal reflection. We are already halfway through the annual onslaught of bills, testimony, documents, amendments, and votes that comprise the 90-day legislative session. Amid the flurry of speeches, emails, and meetings that threaten to bury us with the sheer volume of too much information, I would like us today to reflect on those who preceded us. What we experience is the product of decades, perhaps even centuries, of thoughtful ideas, rigorous debate, and good governance from those who came before us in this chamber. I ask that we remember that what we do here grows out of the dedication, hard work, and foresight of so many who came before in this chamber and in our personal lives. They stand behind us. They speak to us through their actions. Their failures instruct us. Their achievements inspire us. And as we hurl toward the final half of the 2024 legislative session, let us revel in the knowledge that if we do our jobs with purpose, clarity, and vision, those who follow us in this hallowed chamber will be inspired by our achievements. To quote First Lady Michelle Obama, we've got a responsibility to live up to the legacy of those who came before us by doing all that we can to help those who come after us. Let us pray that we are up to the task. Thank you, colleagues.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? So the clerk will take the call. There being 130 members present, and the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, February 22nd, 2024.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Recognizing the gentleman. Yes. From Charles County, yes. Can everyone please take their seats? Please take your seats.
Colleagues, good morning. If you could briefly bear with me, I would like to introduce a young lady to this body. On April the 3rd of 1982, a young lady was being dropped off from Brandywine, Maryland after hanging out with her friends at night. She was 22 years old from Frostburg State University. Her name was Stephanie Ann Roper. Unfortunately, from that point on, she was kidnapped, repeatedly raped, tortured, shot, set afire, and partially dismembered in Prince George County, Maryland. Roberta Roper and her late husband, Navy Captain Vincent Roper, are her parents. Not only did they have to suffer the unimaginable horror of losing their daughter in such a violent way, they were then tormented with the indignity of being completely left out of the process in court. They were denied the right to even observe the trial. They played no part in the plea negotiations. They couldn't even provide a victim witness statement to give their daughter her voice one last time. After all of that indignity, the Ropers did something that most of us could never imagine or find the strength to do. They founded the Stephanie Roper Foundation. Instead of focusing on their pain and suffering, they focused their energy on ensuring that no other victims or families of those victims and families of victims of crimes would ever again suffer the callous and dismissive treatment by the courts and law enforcement. They took their agony and their indignation and they focused on change. It's now called the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. It's the most successful victims' rights organization in the United States. They've assisted thousands of Marylanders as well as victims throughout the other states in this country. Roberta's accomplishments are revered and distinguished. They've seated next to presidents, congressional representatives, colleagues right here in Annapolis to pursue legislative breakthroughs. The organization has championed over 100 legislative changes right here in this very state that makes up the bulk of Maryland's crime victims' rights laws, including when the Maryland voters ratified the Maryland Victims' Rights Amendment to the Maryland Constitution, which is now Article 47 of the Declaration of Rights. These accomplishments demonstrate her gentle but relentless determination to add balance to a system that so often ignores the rights and feelings of the victims of crime. Ms. Roper, as a parent, I could not imagine your suffering, nor could I have found the fortitude to push on, turn that pain into purpose. You have accomplished so much more to change this world than any elected official that I have ever met. You remind us that victims should always be the center of the criminal justice process, not the violent perpetrator. In all of our talks about defendants and incarcerated individuals, your work remains a stark reminder that victims deserve justice too. Countless victims and their families, many of whom you will never meet, pay homage to you for assuaging their anguish and drying their tears, giving them a voice when they are otherwise muted in a system that did not want to hear them anyway. And although no amount of notoriety, accomplishment, or recognition could ever replace your beautiful daughter, you will never be forgotten in this great state. And neither will your daughter, Stephanie Ann Roper. You are loved, and we are grateful. Thank you.
Will the reading clerk, will members could please remain standing. Will the reading clerk please read the resolution?
Be it hereby known to all that the House of Delegates of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Roberta Roper in recognition of 42 years of dedicated leadership in establishing the rights of crime victims in Maryland and worldwide as the founder of the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. The entire membership extends best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 23rd day of February 2024.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Speaker, and Delegate Wilson, and the entire House of Delegates. I want to express my personal gratitude to you all for this great honor and recognition, but most importantly, for the people we've been privileged to serve over the past 4 decades, crime victims and their survivors. As you know, this year marks the 30th anniversary of the passage of a state constitutional amendment for crime victims' rights. Passing any amendment is not an easy task, but we had a very dedicated, diverse coalition of victim advocates, laypersons, crime victims, and survivors who persevered and won this constitutional amendment in Maryland. Many of them are no longer with us, but I have to recognize some unsung heroes who are here today. People like Marjorie Patton, Ricardo Wiggs, Deborah Tall, Charles and Lori Schilling. Our message to the people of Maryland then and today is the same. Crime victims and survivors, no less than those accused or convicted of crime, should be treated with dignity and respect and afforded rights to be informed, to be present and heard in criminal justice proceedings. So again, I thank you all.
Introduction of House bills. The clerk will read the bills and their committee assignments.
House Bill 1513, Delegate Smith. House Rules by Order of Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
The clerk will read the bond initiatives and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 48, February 23rd, 2024, referred to appropriations.
Message from the Senate. Consent calendar number 9, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 26, Senator Bailey, Judiciary.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 26, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 134 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading House bills, number 18. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1, Maryland Paint Stewardship.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Briefly, I want to make sure that everyone understands that this isn't an assessment. It isn't simply a fee. It's a tax. It's a tax upon every gallon of paint that's going to be sold in every paint store from Oakland, Ocean City, and all points in between. And that perhaps the biggest problem that I and others have with the tax is that we don't know what it's going to be. So every other tax that you're probably going to vote on here, they're going to say you're going to tax X percentage of X transaction, or you're going to impose this X fee. It's an absolute certain. You know what you're voting on. It can be calculated out. This assessment is going to be determined largely by third parties, not by the legislature. MDE certainly has a role in it, but there's a group out there, and this group administers these paint plans in different jurisdictions, and they're going to tell your constituents how much extra money they have to pay. Is it 25 cents a gallon, 50 cents a gallon, $1.50 a gallon, more than that? What's the answer to the question? We don't know. We don't know. We're just gonna delegate that to a third party, and then they are going to provide those tax assessments. We don't believe that that's the right way to do tax policy, and we don't believe that pushing these costs onto consumers and small businesses is really the appropriate way to deal with the issue of how do you remediate any environmental concerns from unused paint. As a result, that's why I think many of us will be voting against this bill today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Cecil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to make a few statements about this bill and why I'll be voting against it and urging you to do the same. The nature of paint is similar to that of batteries. So batteries are treated as a universal waste, and the federal government actually got heavily involved in this and set up programs, whereas the industry is the group that's responsible for the recycling of said batteries. That cost may be passed on to the customer in some way, but for the most part, it's done through the federal government. This is lead acid, all the rechargeables, and the industry has taken that on. If we're shifting and we're talking in that same thread of universal waste, paint is broken into two categories, being latex and oil. It's my understanding in the research that I've done, and you can look this up as well, that latex paint accounts for about 80% of the sales of all paint. Latex is not considered universal waste. It is considered something that can just be discarded like any other household trash. The remaining amount of the paint is 20%, and which is oil-based and is considered universal waste. However, this bill, from what I've read and can see, covers all paints. So therefore, we will be propping up a program, and as was alluded to by my colleague, the minority leader, we'll be assessing a fee on all of those paints unnecessarily. We don't know what that fee is, but it's certainly going to pass that cost directly on to our consumers. I feel that the federal program that was established for batteries is in a better posture, and we should be following the guidance for universal waste set by that precedent, and that's why I'll be voting against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm voting against it because it's just a silly bill. Think about it for a second. Now, just think about it for a second. I know I got a few ums here, and that's good because I got your attention. But think about it. You buy a gallon of paint, right? You're going to use it. You're probably going to use the entire gallon of paint. You put it on your wall. 30 years from now, if you have to do a renovation, what are you going to do? Take the drywall down, put it in the landfill, and then dispose of it that way. We had a conversation just this week that there is no scientific evidence that proves that paint is toxic to groundwater. It's not toxic to our rivers. It's not toxic to our streams or the Chesapeake Bay. But we're still going to try to recycle this thing. I would say most consumers, and probably you, if you're honest with yourself, if you buy a gallon of paint and you don't use the whole thing, you're probably going to store it in a garage. You're probably going to store it in a closet somewhere, in the basement. And you're not going to take it back to the store to dump it in a container to have them reuse it. Like, this isn't going to happen from a pure practical sense. It's not going to happen. And we're going to get, every one of our consumers are going to be charged a fee for something they're not even going to take advantage of, more than likely. So that's the reason why I'm voting against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chairman of the committee.
I thank my friend from the Eastern Shore. It's not a silly bill, and frankly, don't appreciate that characterization of it. I will say that despite the brilliance of the sponsor of the bill, she didn't come up with this on her own. I believe 10 other states, it might be 12 other states are doing this. So it does happen. You may not do it, delegate. That's fine. You store your paint in the basement. Someday when you sell your house, it gets thrown in the trash. Can't stop you from doing that. But it's not a silly bill, and it's something that's done in multiple other states. The fee is set by the Maryland Department of the Environment through a process. So it's not that we're just outsourcing this entirely to other folks. We're following what other states have done to try to have a cleaner, greener environment and less waste. And that's the purpose of the bill, and I hope you'll join me in voting green.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 99 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 43, Motor Vehicle Registration, Exceptions for Golf Carts Authorization.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be read on this bill today, and I briefly wanted to explain why. So there are a lot of local communities which experience a lot of unsafe activities, a lot of near misses in their community. They're begging for enforcement, and they're not receiving it whatsoever. And in response to requests to use certain roads, certain local highways, we've seen this bill several times now, which is expanding it beyond local roads onto local highways. And what we're in effect doing is giving the authority for these exceptions to local governments, the same local governments which are not providing any local enforcement. So I think what we're trying to accomplish, you know, it should be done. It is done in certain cases, but I think the check and balance is that we do it here at the state level where we're not so subjected to the pressures of local land use and development. And respectfully, I'll be read today.
Okay. Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 43, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 93, Landlord and Tenant, Termination of Residential Lease, Limitation of Liability for Rent.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 121 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 93, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 211, Business Regulation, Contractors, Subcontractors, and Brokers, Prohibited Conduct.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 211, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 241, Housing and Community Development, Just Community Designation.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 99 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 241, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar
Madam
third
Speaker.
read, House Bill number 19.
Madam-
Clerk will read the first bill. Yes, I'm sorry.
Madam
Yes.
Speaker, may I be recorded in the yea for House Bill 93?
Sure, just get your slip up there. Thank you. Calendar of third reading, House Bill number 19. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 368, Maryland Commission on Civil Rights Monetary Relief.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker,
Gentleman from Montgomery.
I rise with the permission of the floor leader because I will be enthusiastically supporting this legislation because as a person with a disability, I routinely encounter architectural and numerous other barriers. In our debate with our friends across the aisle, I've been hearing a lot about the businesses, but not a lot about the protected classes. And it's important to remember, friends, that the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. So businesses have had ample time to comply with this legislation. In addition, there are numerous resources for businesses to help make their businesses accessible, including several tax credits they can take advantage of. And if they want to hire an employee with a disability but are not sure about how to provide accommodations, there's the Job Accommodation Network. Further, if they have a question about their architectural requirements, they call for free the ADA Mid-Atlantic Technical Assistance Center. So these laws are really so old that I really don't have much sympathy for businesses that are not complying, especially given that within the ADA, they get an exemption if a renovation is not readily achievable, and also they don't have to accommodate an employee with a disability if there's an undue hardship within for the business in accommodating that employee. So at this point, I heard from my friend from the Eastern Shore a lot about fines and his concerns about fines, but my sense is I think fines are meritorious at this point. The civil rights statutes are so old that sometimes to get businesses' attention, you have to hit them where it hurts in their wallet because they're not taking advantage of resources that they could be taking, especially given that people with disabilities only get injunctive relief and attorney's fees. So I will be proudly voting for this bill, and I urge my colleagues to walk a mile in my shoes, so to speak, and vote for this as well. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 368, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 391, Corporations and Association, Protestant Episcopal Church, Diocese of Washington.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate the body allowing me to special order this bill earlier in the week to take a better look at it. And this may be the the only time in my life I wish I had gone to law school so I could argue it better. But after looking at this bill, I find myself, interestingly enough, aligned with secular Maryland's opposition to the bill. And they make some good points. And as I researched it, I really feel that this bill violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. And it's really laid out well in a veto that President James Madison produced in 1811. And he said to a similar bill that he vetoed, because the bill exceeds the rightful authority to which governments are limited by the essential distinction between civil and religious functions, which violates in particular the article of the Constitution of the United States, which declares that Congress shall make no law respecting a religious establishment. I do not think that the state of Maryland and our laws should be weighing in on Episcopal Church business. They could do this without this bill, and for that, I will be voting against the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing gentlelady from Montgomery.
Thank you for the commentary, and I just want to bring us a little bit up to date since the time of James Madison. This bill, as mentioned before, this bill just brings the Diocese of Washington, D.C. in a line with the other two dioceses that operate in Maryland, which have had the law that we're passing now since 1970. And so the reason why the Washington Diocese could not affect this law then is because we weren't in sync. Maryland law wasn't in sync with Washington, D.C. And so now that they are in sync, we can now make this law available to the diocese, the 31 parishes in Maryland, to be in a line with the other two dioceses in Maryland. So again, we suggest that you vote for this vote. This bill is bringing our law up to date to be consistent. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 119 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 391, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 472, Education School Mapping Data Program, established.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 472, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 558, Primary and Secondary Education Comprehensive Health Education Framework, established.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll just get right to my point on the bill. I rise in opposition to this, and I'll say, first and foremost, I think we can all agree that children are inherently innocent and impressionable beings, and I'll just state, for example, my nephews, two of them are in first grade. One of them, Luciano, wants to be a gecko when he gets older. The other one, Leo, wants to be a cowboy dinosaur, which I think are the perfect examples of imagination and innocence that children possess. And I think we have an obligation to protect that innocence as a government body. And a bill that focuses on gender identity and sexual orientation in terms of children's studies, to me, is an assault on that innocence. And when it comes to the educational establishment and the so-called experts in this state, if they think that sexual agendas that involve gender identity and sexual orientation in schools for children should be taught, well, I think that says everything we need to know about our so-called experts. And I think that they need to understand that parents are not the enemy of a quality education in this state, and that parents should have every right to opt out of any type of education that involves this material. And I think what's most sad about this bill is that it targets one county, because the communities there, the families there, and the school board there decided how they best want to educate their children. So this bill, in my opinion, targets that. And if we're going to indoctrinate children with an agenda, it shouldn't be a sexual one, but it should be one that contains math skills, reading skills, writing skills. And for all those reasons, I oppose this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important to, we had some discussion on second reader what this actually bill does. And this bill, as amended, separates gender identity and sexual orientation and makes its own standalone curriculum. Teaches it to kindergartners and doesn't allow the parents to opt out. Now, I've had this theory about being an elected official that it's not as hard as some make it seem. You know, when you're in your community, you meet your constituents, they tell you their problems, they tell you their opinions, and then you come here, you try to fix their problems, and you vote their opinions. And when I'm speaking to my constituents about their concerns about the school system, I hear parents tell me they're concerned about their overall education. They're concerned whether kids are learning the basics. They're concerned about disruptive students in their classroom and discipline issues. They're concerned about school safety. And as they get older, they're concerned about extracurricular activities and their college readiness and whatever else that's in their daily activity. That's what the parents are concerned about in the schools. I've never had a parent come to me and say, do you know what? My kid has mastered reading, writing, arithmetic, science, history. Do you know what we need? More gender identity and sexual orientation taught to them. That conversation has never happened. And because I care about my constituents and I care about their opinion, I put out a legislative survey, pre-session survey every year. And last year I asked the question, on the topic of education, do you support eliminating the teaching of gender ideology to kindergartners through third grade children in Maryland public schools? The survey came back at 87.6%. Now, I know some of you are sitting there, well, you're from a red area. That was a survey. It wasn't an official scientific poll. Well, let's take a look at the Washington Times, certainly not a conservative think tank by any means. They asked a basic question. Do you support or oppose allowing public school teachers to provide classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity to children in elementary school? Came back 70% opposed it. Now, I got to imagine if we said, hey, we're going to make it a standalone curriculum and the parents are not going to be able to opt out, I got to imagine even more parents would be opposed to that. This is a radical bill. A radical bill driven by, and parents do not support this, Marylanders do not support this. It's a radical bill driven by a small minority of activists. And why the entire General Assembly here and the Maryland House of Delegates is supporting it, I have no idea. But I'll tell you, I do have an idea that I know parents' rights are under attack. And this war on parents that we have needs to stop immediately. On behalf of my constituents, my parents that I represent, and the children that I represent, I'm happily voting red on this bill, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, in Wednesday's discussion, we heard how important it is to trust the experts who created the Maryland Comprehensive Health Education Framework. By their design, the topics of gender identity and sexual orientation were thoughtfully and deliberately placed under the family life and human sexuality component. The current introduction page of the framework clearly tells us why and shows that this bill is in direct opposition and conflict with the guidance from the experts that we are to trust. And please bear with me. I hate reading things, but this is so critically important. I am literally reading from the document. You can look it up yourselves on page 6. The family life and human sexuality component of the regulation and framework represents all students, regardless of ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Concepts and skills related to family life and human sexuality must be age appropriate and taught by teachers who have had additional preparation in content and teaching methods of the material. The framework is not instructional material for classroom use. It is intended to guide educational professionals in developing curricula that is adopted by the local boards. Local educational professionals should ensure that lessons and content are age appropriate and reflect educational equity. Local education agencies develop the curricula to implement the regulations and is aligned with the framework. In developing their family life and human sexuality curricula, local education agencies must establish a joint committee of educators and representatives of the community to review and comment on instruction materials. Parents and guardians must have the opportunity to view instructional materials to be used in teaching objectives. Moreover, local education agencies must establish policies, guidelines, and procedures for parents to opt out their students from family life and human sexuality instruction in all grades, except for HIV and AIDS prevention. And here's where it's really important. That's my added part. The opt-out provision reflects the state boards and MSDE's respect for individual parents' values and beliefs concerning family life and human sexuality instruction. Each local education agency establishes a procedure for providing opt-out students with appropriate alternative learning objectives and/or assessments in health education. The current, that's end quote. The current introduction provides the guidance on how the framework is to be implemented and clears up a lot of the original confusion and uncertainty about the intent of the state board and MSD, especially around parents' right to opt their child out of sensitive topics like gender identity and sexual orientation down to age 5. MSDE and the state board shows respect for parents' values and beliefs. This bill does not. We are now putting into state law that the State Board of Education can change this framework whenever they feel it's necessary. Any changes to any part of the document should now include public discussion, notice, and documentation to follow normal open meetings guidelines and compliance that will ensure public trust and transparency. So that is why I am a no on this bill.
Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague and committee member for reading that. I've read it often in committee, but not quite as much of the framework. And I think what we can agree is just what my colleague read, that we do like the framework and we want you to follow it. And what we're finding is that there's one particular jurisdiction that is not following it. So we are taking part of that framework and saying, look, you don't want to follow it, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it in statute, because all students need to feel respected and represented in their public schools. There's been a lot of rhetoric, and what my colleague didn't get to is what is in the framework when we talk about kindergarten, when we talk about pre-kindergarten. We're talking about teaching, I'm reading, recognize a range of ways people identify and express themselves. Identify different types of families. Identify that families are groups of people that love and support one another. They're not talking about sex, which is what folks would want you to believe. They're not talking about sex in kindergarten. Come on, I'm a parent myself, so that's actually quite offensive. The fact that it was suggested that individuals are being indoctrinated into, yes, respecting each other, showing that all types of people require dignity. That's what we're trying to indoctrinate our students into. And so what is actually offensive is the fact that all of your jurisdictions, each and every one of your jurisdictions except one, is following this. That's what should be offensive. It should be offensive that one jurisdiction said, no, we're not going to respect one type of individual. That's what should be offensive to everyone. And let's be clear, the health framework is about much, much more than gender identity and sexual orientation. It's about health promotion. It's about mental and emotional health. It's about substance abuse prevention. It's about safety and violence prevention. It's about healthy eating, disease prevention and control, and if we pass this bill, it will now be very timely about social media and internet use safety for our kids. This piece of legislation is about keeping my children safe, your children safe, and all the children in our state of Maryland safe. And I would urge this body to vote green on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Thank you. I'd like to vote for this bill because it does do a lot of the things that my friend and the chair of my committee just said. It does a lot of good things. It also does some things that, in my opinion, are too vague and potentially go too far. I'd really like to vote for this bill because there's a person sitting in this chamber who, from the first day I came here, treated me with nothing but dignity, decency, respect, friendship, collegiality, and who I consider to be a friend, and I consider in some ways to be a mentor, taught me things about how this system works. And she cares very much about this bill, and she has very good reason to. And I care very much about people affected in her situation. I have a little boy, 7 years old, almost 8. I don't want my little boy to ever go to school and to discriminate against or to view someone as the other or to bully or to participate in anything derogatory toward another child because that child comes from a family that doesn't look the same way maybe his does, or maybe his doesn't. He, unfortunately, very unfortunately, will be the child of divorce, as I am, as many people in this chamber may be. And he'll be looked at differently because of that. If that's all this did, and it could be communicated as simply and as ably and as clearly by the experts, by the advocates, by the folks who write the bureaucratic curriculum words, if it could be communicated as clearly, as simply, as honestly, as lovingly, as ably as what it's communicated by the gentlelady from Howard, by my friend from Montgomery County, I could vote for the bill. Unfortunately, in my years of observing, my 10 now long years on the Ways and Means Committee, of observing how the bureaucracy and the experts and the advocates frame these things, I don't feel 100% confident and 100% comfortable that in some places, in some schools, in some ways, that this will not be interpreted as bringing content. And I want to make very clear, I don't care if the content is about the LGBTQ community or if the content is about the heterosexual community. I care about the age appropriateness of sexual content for children. I do not think that children in elementary school need to really know a whole heck of a lot about human sexuality or about sexual acts or about sexual indicators of who you're attracted to. Because I do believe, as my friend from Baltimore County said, they are innocent. I watch every day my son's innocence begin to slip away from him as he grows older, and it is in some sad way heartbreaking to see those little children grow and learn things and say things and do things that strip away that magic that all of us once had. And so that is the only reason that I vote for the bill. I wish, I pray, I hope that we can reach some level of compromise on this. I know we hear about one jurisdiction. I hope the people in this chamber who are from that jurisdiction understand it's not right to single you out over and over again. We try not to do that either. There are communities here who have problems that are far different than my community. And we try not to simply focus on those communities and vilify them, and I'm sure that's not what's intended here. But I don't want people to think that folks are voting against this bill out of bigotry, or that folks are voting against this bill because of some type of hatred or intolerance. They're not. They're voting against the bill, many of us, because we simply think that it's just too fuzzy. It's just too vague. I said many times, those of us who did go to law school, fortunately or unfortunately, as my colleague from Baltimore County remarked earlier, we know a famous statement from Justice Potter Stewart of the United States Supreme Court who said, "I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And so what I would suggest to you that if they could just tell us, the school, educational officials, the bureaucrats, if they could just tell us in all 24 jurisdictions from one end of the state to the other, this is what's going to be introduced to kindergartners, first graders, second, third, fourth grade. This is it. This is the language. This is the imagery. This is what we're going to do. And so that when a kid comes home from school and says, hey, this little girl in my class has 2 mommies, you say, yeah, that's families are loving. Families are different. Doesn't really matter about that, buddy. Doesn't really matter about that, sweetie. That's okay. Everybody's a family. If that's what was going on, and we knew to a certainty that that's all that was going on, no one should oppose that. No one should oppose that. But the bill has too many potentialities to go further than that. And that's why today, unfortunately, I'll be voting no against the bill. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the chair of the committee for this very important bill. First, as a delegate who stands here representing Maryland's LGBTQ+ community, the associations to the geckos and the animals is deeply painful and absurd. And I will just say to my colleague who earlier said that they are here representing parents from across the state, in your district, you're also representing members and students who belong to the LGBTQ community who, thanks to this bill, are going to feel seen and respected in the curriculum in their schools. Look, I'll just say I grew up seeing a whole lot of curriculum and content in my schools about straight heterosexual couples. That didn't make me straight, right? And if I had gone to school at a time when my curriculum reflected my identity, reflected who I was, respected me, it would have had a profound impact on my life. So with that, I will proudly be voting in favor of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for putting forth this bill. And thank you to my colleagues on the opposing side for the issues that they raised up. My concern is that it's a very insular argument that you're approaching with regards to sexuality, because I believe that from 6 to 12 years old, I'm sure my family would have appreciated having children understand what's a good touch and a bad touch, and breaking pedophilic cycles inside our families. And I believe that these children should have been protected. And this bill does that by educating them that somebody shouldn't be coming in at night and touching them inappropriately, whether they were a male or a female. And let's recognize that the average age of a child entering into human trafficking in the state of Maryland is 12 years old. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if the gentleman wants to say something about my comments, that's perfectly fine. I'm not upset. I'm not here for myself. But I have to make the point, and I'm here for the children, the innocent children, like my niece and my nephews. And when he makes a comment like that, it gets right back to the point. How somebody could find LGBTQ in a comment about children's innocence comes back to the fact that for whatever reason, the over-sexualization is what I'm talking about. So again, I'm not here for myself, but I am here for these children because they cannot speak for themselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the bill sponsor for bringing this bill forward and recognizing that all of our Maryland children deserve respect. They deserve to be treated with humanity and dignity. I want you all to take a second, since we're all pulling up documents anyways, and pull up the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey report from Maryland. Every state in the country has to do it. Look it up. 1 in 4 children, 1 in 4 do not identify as heterosexual. Do not identify as heterosexual. And that's of the people that are willing to openly state in a survey that they do not openly identify as heterosexual. We're not talking about this tiny subsect of community that exists in our society. We're talking about real children on the ground who have every right to learn about their health as everyone else does. But even with that preface, let me say this to all of you. This bill has nothing to do with any of that. This bill has to do with codifying our health framework so that all of our children, whether they be LGBTQ or not, are respected and given the opportunities to learn about their health in a healthy way. We like to get up here and talk about mental wellness and about the fact that our kids are suffering. This bill worries about that. This bill concerns that. We worry about kids getting sexually assaulted or molested. This bill helps make sure that that happens, that kids recognize when it happens. And this bill codifies that parents still have the right to opt out of the exact same section they are already allowed to opt out of in the existing framework. This bill does one thing. It guarantees that every kid, every child in our community, in every single district that we live in, has an opportunity to learn about healthy relationships, gets an opportunity to learn that there is a diversity out there in this world, and gets an opportunity to learn about what is and is not appropriate. This bill seeks to do one thing, and I want to stress this as my final point, Madam Speaker. It stresses that no one on this planet has ever been harmed from learning that their world is bigger than what is immediately around them, learning that this world is bigger than their individual community, and learning that people come from different backgrounds, different communities, and different spaces. That's a beautiful thing that should be celebrated. And it has absolutely nothing to do with trying to get between the relationship of a child and their parent that is always sacrosanct. I encourage everyone to vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Is there
Madam
any
Speaker.
further debate?
Madam
Recognize
Speaker.
General Lady from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll try not to get too emotional, but as mother of a gay son, my only child, I can only imagine how scary it was for him to come out to his Chinese immigrant parents. We got over that, luckily. He has a loving family, is now a fully functioning, happy adult. But my cultural community to this day is still struggling with accepting a lot of their own children and relatives and colleagues who are different, because we came from different cultural or even religious backgrounds. So if we allow parents to opt out of such education for their children, we're allowing parents to deny future leaders, business executives, and landlords of the opportunities to learn what is normal and acceptable. They are the ones who will grow up to make decisions about who they are willing to make wedding cakes, wedding gowns, and wedding rings for. They are the ones who make decisions who they are willing to lease the apartments to. They are the ones who make decisions who they are willing to hire and promote. For my son to be successful and productive and feel safe walking down to a bar, to hang out with friends, depends on the whole society's respect and acceptance. And for these reasons, I will strongly vote for this bill, and thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 97 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 558, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 728, Health Insurance Qualified Resident Enrollment Program Access to Care Act.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll try to be brief. We've kind of talked about this throughout the week. This bill largely deals with the eligibility to participate in the Maryland Health Exchange program. As many of you have probably read by now, the program is open to non-citizens that are here lawfully. In order to open it up to non-citizens that are here non-lawfully, you have to request a waiver, and that is the purpose of the bill. It's to request a waiver. The part that I have the most issue with, it would also include individuals that are not only here unlawfully, but that are sitting in jail awaiting a disposition of that case, as we kind of talked about with the Chair of Judiciary earlier this week. So again, for those reasons that this bill requires or is asking for a waiver to allow non-citizens that are here unlawfully, and in some cases that are sitting in jail waiting a disposition of their charge, they would now be eligible potentially to enroll in our taxpayer subsidized health exchange. Madam Speaker, for those reasons, I'm opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a couple of questions for the floor leader, if I may.
Vice Chair of the committee.
Yes, sir.
Good almost afternoon. It's still morning, barely. I'm curious, since the bill deals with qualified resident, and it says here in the bill with respect to health insurance that it means an individual including a minor regardless of their immigration status, correct? So in other words, they're not here legally in the United States or Maryland, is that correct?
You're talking about a minor who's going to buy insurance?
Just talking about what the bill covers.
The bill, yes, here in Maryland.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so it's a yes. So my next
Yes.
question is, do we know how many people would be affected by this bill? How many people are here illegally who are going to take advantage of this particular insurance?
The best guess of the number of people who could potentially be eligible, depending on income, because remember they're paying full price, is around 112,000 people. And that is a number that's derived from the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange when they look at the total population, how many people are enrolled, et cetera. So that's the number that they give us.
Do we know how many people?
In terms of who would actually take advantage of the program, we really don't know, because it's really going to be income dependent since they have to pay the full premium.
Do we know how many people are in Maryland now illegally? In other words, they're not citizens of the United States.
We think there's probably around 250,000.
Okay, because I was just reading, and it wasn't, a right-wing or left-wing paper. It was they're thinking more in the 400 to 500,000 range, and increasing every day.
So
Does that sound about right?
I apologize. I was referring to the number that we think are uninsured. So.
But we don't know.
We don't know. No.
So it could be 400,000 people to 500,000 people and growing.
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then my next question for you, and I do appreciate the answers to the question. My next question for you is, there is my understanding is, and my personal experience has been, and colleagues, even in this body, has been that it's very difficult to get an appointment with a doctor, even a primary care physician in the state of Maryland. How does this bill address that?
The bill addresses allowing people to get health insurance. That's health care. That's what the bill addresses. As I said, we don't know how many people will be able to take advantage of this program, but that is, we think that it would be across the entire state, and what you're addressing is a workforce issue. We need to work on that workforce issue now.
So how
there are other ramifications for not having health insurance. It's the people who don't get preventive care or primary care who are ending up in our emergency rooms, where we have the longest wait times in the country.
but we have the longest wait times in the country actually for a lot of different areas of medical care. And I'm just trying to figure out, why wouldn't you solve that problem first before bringing in maybe 500,000 people and growing onto a healthcare exchange when you don't have the doctors to support the citizens of the United States who live in Maryland already?
I don't anticipate it being a huge and significant number of folks who are able to take advantage of this, again, paying full premium. But I would suggest to you that if they can get primary care and preventive care, they won't need the specialists that we have difficulty right now. And you're right, sir, we in HTO are very cognizant about the workforce issues, and we see bills all the time about how we might address that.
So when you go to see your primary care physician, do you know how long it takes to see in Maryland on average a primary care? So in other words, you call or you sign up online. Do you know how long that wait is now to be able to see someone just for your primary care physician?
I can't give you a number on
in Calvert
a
County,
wait
it's
time.
weeks. And then you go to your primary care physician, and then the primary care physician says, you now need to see a specialist. And I know we've all been there. And if you haven't, believe me, it'll happen sooner or later. Do you know how long it takes to see a specialist when your doctor gives you a referral?
I don't personally know.
It can take months or less, possibly, but it certainly is not going to take a few weeks, probably a month at least. And I'm just curious why the committee felt it was okay to provide health insurance to people who are not citizens of the United States when the citizens of the United States that live in Maryland, that built these hospitals and put this medical system in place, can't even get medical care themselves.
The committee believes in health equity, and as does this body. We have voted in a commitment to health equity, which means all of the people who are living here in Maryland. Right now, the federally qualified health centers are ready to take to help those folks who can take advantage of this program. And again, I would suggest, if you have ideas about how to improve our workforce, our healthcare workforce, we are open and ready.
Thank you. Thank you for answering the question. So, Madam Speaker, on the bill, the term health equity is meaningless if you can't get access to a doctor. Absolutely nonsense. And that's the experience that we're having throughout the state, and certainly in Calvert County. I just do not understand why folks believe that when you're a citizen of the United States that you should get into a queue behind folks who are not citizens of the United States. And I want to make very clear about something. I'm married to an immigrant, a naturalized citizen. Her father was a doctor, and he worked in the ER, and we would visit him all the time. And this problem, of course, did not exist back then. And all we're asking is, if you want to talk about equity, equity is when you treat the people who are here, who are American citizens, respectfully by giving them the care that they're paying for because they built these hospitals. And for all those reasons, I'm voting no on this absurdly ridiculous bill. Thank you.
Chair of the committee.
All due respect, this is not a ridiculous bill. The Health and Government Operations Committee, like all the other 5 committees, are very thoughtful. And when we make decisions listening to both sides with respect. And I have always given you respect, so I expect the same. That being said, in Maryland, and I want to give you a little history, before the ACA, Maryland had more than 756,000 people that were uninsured. After we adopted the exchange and we expanded Medicaid, because we were one of the first states to do that, our uninsured rate went down by more than 50%. So for the first time, all 23 counties in Baltimore City, 24 jurisdictions, people had insurance. And they had policies that were affordable. Then we discover on the Health and Government Operations Committee that there were people in the individual insurance market that were paying a lot of money in their premiums. So what did we do? I introduced a bill with the support of this body, because it takes more than one of us. It takes a village. They created a reinsurance program. Whether you agree with it or not, I respect you for that. But that bill brought in more than $1.2 billion to stabilize that market. For over 5 years, we have been able to keep premiums stable. In addition to that, the Health and Government Operations Committee didn't stop there. We decided, wait a second, there's still young people that cannot afford it and are not insured. So what did this body do? This body created a subsidies program, a pilot program, and you will see next week a bill, a follow-up to that, to allow and help young people pay for insurance. Some of them pay less than $200 a month because they're healthy and it helps the pool. But we didn't stop there. What did the ACO committee did? It also we put in a bill to create a check the box. When you file your taxes, there's a little box there that came from this body. And it says, do you have insurance? And if you don't have insurance, may we connect you to the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, which is our public exchange, which has navigators, which speaks over 200 languages, and makes the navigation easier because there are hundreds and hundreds of products that the private sector cannot handle. We have been able to cover people through that as well. So who do we have left today that is uninsured? I don't want you to think about 500,000. The sky is not going to fall. We have left 350,000 people presently, 6%, right, from 14% that are uninsured. 250,000 of them, approximately closer to 256,000, are undocumented. So as a policy committee, we decided, where are these people going to get their care? You know where they go? They go to the emergency room. Maryland has the worst emergency wait time in the entire nation. And I don't know about you, but I went to the ER for my little finger. And when I went in there, people were sitting on the floor, on the chairs. It was overwhelming. So as a policy committee, I always ask, why is this bill being introduced? What is it going to do? Who's it going to help? And it's a balancing act. It's going to help all of us at the end. Healthcare is not free. Whether people pay for insurance and that pays for their care, we end up paying, all of us. Now, I want to make sure and be very clear about what this bill does. Please don't speculate. Let's stay with the truth, with what the bill does, with what's in front of you. Do not speculate. This is what the bill does. It saves us a lot of money because guess what? Hospitals last year spent anywhere between $120 and $150 million in uncompensated care. Uncompensated care. Not only that, we also have people that are not getting their care. That when they end up going to the ER, it costs a lot of money because you're not spending money on prevention. In addition to that, let's be clear. Please don't speculate. I want to be absolutely clear. Do not speculate. They will be paying full freight with their hard-earned money. Their hard-earned money. No subsidies. Again, no subsidies. And they're paying Maryland taxes. In Maryland, we had, the year before last, 89,000 people. They file with their ITIN number that is given by the federal government so they can work and pay taxes. They That group of 89,000 pay over $140 million in taxes to Maryland alone. And guess what? Because I want to be clear, I don't want you to speculate. I have more respect for you when you don't speculate. Just stick to the bill. You know what happens with those people that pay $140 million? They don't get those state programs that can qualify for social services. And they even pay for unemployment insurance, and they can't get unemployment. And they are helping who? All of Maryland. Because that money goes into the general fund. So as a policy committee, please don't say it's ridiculous. That is offensive. We were thoughtful. We may not agree as a matter of philosophy, values, but in my value system, covering people who are here, it is preventive medicine, cheaper when it's preventive, and it helps all of us. This is not free, not free, not free. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 7 of the bill, line 20. If the General Assembly authorizes funding to subsidize premiums under the program. So I was reading that, and then, of course, I noticed the chair of the committee did not address the real problem, which I discussed, which is the lack of doctors in the state and the amount of wait time it takes for the citizens of Maryland, who are citizens of the United States, to see. And that is a very real problem. It's a very real problem in Calvert. It's a very real problem with everyone that I speak to across the state. And I'm allowed to have free speech.
Absolutely.
So, and you are too. So the words "don't speculate," that's inappropriate. I can say what I want on this floor. I was elected
Gentlemen,
by the
stick
people
to
of Calvert
what your
County to do it.
issue is,
This is the
please.
issue, Madam Speaker. This is an important issue, the issue of free speech on this floor. I will not yield free speech.
You
ever.
said it several times.
Thank you.
You have anything else to add?
Yes. And what I'm going to add is that the citizens of the United States deserve to be in the queue for the hospitals they built and have the proper care with the proper number of doctors, and we don't have them. And while it may be true that you work hard, and I do believe that, okay, I do. I genuinely believe that. It doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the fact that the policies of this General Assembly have chased doctors out of this state, and there aren't enough of them. Thank you.
Committee Chair?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I would disagree with a statement that was said. And I believe in free speech, but I believe in using the truth when I speak. That being said, the bill does say, and it's in plain English, that in the future, if it says no subsidies are to be considered now, and that in the future, if subsidies were to be considered, they must come to the General Assembly. We do that with every bill that we consider. But the truth is that this bill does not have subsidies. And that is, my friend, what I'm saying. That is the truth. Now, regarding the healthcare shortage, you know, that happened, a lot of it because of COVID. But we have, that's another bill, but we have a lot of bills in our committee that are dealing with that. And you're going to get an opportunity to vote on that. And I hope I see your green button, because there are a lot of compact bills, right, to make it easier. The federally qualified centers have built capacity, and they testify that they have capacity. So we're working on that. That is a priority for this body. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Joe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to center this debate back to and appreciate the good chair for speaking to the facts of the bill, because that's what's important when we're talking about not just legislation, but the people tuning in to this floor debate. What this bill does is expand eligibility for a state health exchange. It speaks to our values, but more importantly, it's a recognition that undocumented Marylanders, the people who quite frankly pay more in taxes than the front runner to the Republican Party, but aren't able, aren't able
Madam
to
Speaker, is that
access,
appropriate?
aren't able to access the necessary health care?
Just on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These are folks who pay more in taxes than a good bit of folks, and they aren't able to access unemployment or even health care. And what we're saying to them, if you were to vote against this bill, is that even though you've paid taxes, even though you've contributed to the pot like everybody else, you can't access the necessary services when you need it, which compounds health problems and make, quite frankly, our emergency rooms the places for primary care for a lot of Marylanders. This bill speaks to our values because it's a recognition. Every year, Democrats and Republicans alike quote Dr. King on MLK Day. We cherry pick whatever quote serves us, but few talk about one thing that he has said time and again around healthcare and injustice, that of all the inequalities, of all the forms of discrimination, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. And that is what this debate is about. It's about expanding eligibility to our own state's health exchange to ensure that people are able to pay for their own health insurance. I am of the view that health care should be free in this state and in this country, but that's not what we're debating right now. And I hope that at some point we will get to that debate, but what we are talking about here is undocumented folks that live in our state that contribute significantly more than a lot of folks in this state and outside, and they aren't able to access these care. So I am going to proudly vote for this bill because I know it covers not just my constituents, but it tells the people who contribute, who put into this pot, that they too are eligible to then access the services that we all do. That's what healthcare is about. That's what healthcare, addressing healthcare injustices and inequity. I heard a lot about inequity. When we have folks who are able to access care and those who can't even afford it, that's inequity. And this is what the bill addresses. There are no state subsidies. It is not free healthcare, even though I would like it to be. This allows undocumented folks to purchase through the health exchange a plan that works for them or their family members. It's about our values, and it is not anything that what it was represented by some folks opposite in this debate. And so I'm going to be proudly voting green because extending health insurance to people who don't have it, lowering insurance premiums, all of these things are good. And it's a recognition that our constituents, my constituents, that we see them and we're willing to propose legislation that addresses one of the most fundamental, critical, and quite frankly, as Dr. King rightly put it, one of the most shocking injustices of all, which is injustice in healthcare. I'm proud to vote green on this bill, and thank you to the chair for bringing it.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you. There was a lot of debate on economic and operational feasibility of this bill. I'm going to vote on this bill. This is one of the bills that improve public health. The Maryland, I'm looking the Maryland Department of Health letter. The Maryland Department of Health has affirmed that House Bill 728 can be implemented within existing resources, negating any financial burden on the state budget. And Health Secretary herself testified on this bill, and this assertion dismantled fiscal concern, emphasizing the bill's practicality and sustainable approach to expanding healthcare access. And it is a testament to Maryland's capability to effect meaningful change, leveraging our current infrastructure to serve all residents better, and ensure individuals are more likely to seek preventive care and manage chronic condition, leading to healthier population and reduce strain on emergency healthcare service. Yes, there is a substantial evidence from other healthcare reforms in a state that have expanded coverage, showing that access to health insurance correlates with improved public health outcomes and fewer emergency room visits, and I will vote green on this bill, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 728, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. That ends the work at the desk. Everybody take a deep breath, please. Deep breath. Committee announcements.
Madam Speaker.
General Lady French Georges.
I'd like to record my vote for HB 558 as yay, please.
Slip. Appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will meet at 1 o'clock to vote, followed by budget briefings. 1 o'clock.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House Judiciary Committee will not meet today, will not vote today, and will not vote on Monday.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will meet for bill hearings at 1 o'clock, followed by a voting session in the committee room.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will not meet today. We will be meeting Monday at 11 a.m. for bill hearings and a voting session.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Economic Matters Committee will meeting at 1 p.m. today to finish up our bill hearings for the week. Thank you.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Government Operations Committee will meet immediately after session for a voting session. Thank you.
Any subcommittee announcements? Okay, don't see any delegation announcements? You doing subcommittee?
Subcommittee,
Slow
Madam.
down. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Safety Subcommittee will meet on Monday at 4 p.m. via Zoom.
Any other subcommittee? Okay. Any delegation? What are you? You slow getting up.
Sorry,
Public
Madam Speaker.
Safety?
Subcommittee for Public Safety and Administration, Monday at 1 p.m. We have a budget hearing in the Baltimore City Delegation Room.
Any delegation announcements? Any caucus announcements? Fire and EMS.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Fire and Emergency Medical Services Coalition will meet by Zoom Monday at 2 p.m. Fire and Emergency Medical Services Coalition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Latino caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Latino Caucus Legislative Review Committee will be meeting at 4 o'clock today via Zoom. Just a reminder for our members. Thank you.
Any other caucuses?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, LGBTQ caucus.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. The LGBTQ plus caucus will be meeting on Monday at 6:30 via Zoom, and for all members, there will be an associate membership packet that is going to be delivered to your inboxes over the next week. Be sure to be on the lookout for it. Thank you so much.
Alrighty. Any other caucus?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, this is just a quick reminder that as we're getting into the nuts and bolts of these floor debates, to try and keep the subject matter on the bill and to not address the colleagues, address the argument. Thank you.
Yes. General Lady from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to add to the Majority Leader's focus is that as we're all speaking to one another, it is important to know that the Speaker is the final decider of all issues of decorum within this chamber. So it's really important that we first self-regulate, self-govern, because I know we all know how to speak to each other with respect. And it doesn't mean that you have to dial back your passion. It just means that we have to use the full breadth of all the words we know in our thesaurus and within all the good educations we received to properly relate our concerns, our fears. But it's so important that we speak to each other, no matter if we share the same party identification, if we share the same caucus memberships, to always speak with the most utmost respect. And also I want to remind people, we're going to have to move about the chambers to sometimes support one another on the phone when a floor leader, for example, is leading debate. But it's always something to remember that you must be in your own seat to be recognized to speak on the floor of the House of Delegates. So I just wanted to lift up those few reminders and to just charge us to appeal to our higher angels while also forcefully and enthusiastically advocating for the things that we believe and for the people that we represent. So I thank you all for all that you do, and I just wanted to add that reminder that you are the decider.
Thank you. Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to remind the body that this body unanimously chose this speaker. Unanimously. She is our speaker as well. And I think everyone will remember that we have been scolded repeatedly on this side of the aisle for misusing a party label on the floor and off the floor. So we would really love to see everyone's favorite word happen, equity.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm glad that this issue was brought up because I think this is a conversation that we should have. You know, I think all of us have been told at some point not to ever fall in love with your bills, and I certainly never fall in love with my amendments because they don't last very long here on the floor. So, but that being said, you know, all bills they're just ideas. They're concepts that our job is to put them into law, right? And so if I characterize, I'm going to use today as an example, if I characterize a bill as silly, this is an idea, this is a concept. It has nothing to do with the bill sponsor whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the subcommittee chair has been to the Eastern Shore and didn't have to because she's fair, she's just, very thoughtful, and to be quite honest, I think she's one of the most effective legislators in Annapolis. So that comment had absolutely nothing to do with a person. It had everything to do with a concept. It had everything to do with an idea. So if anybody was offended by that, I'm not going to apologize. And the reason why I say that is because I'll do it again. However, you'll never see me disparage any individual one of us on the floor whatsoever. I'm not going to do that because many of you all are friends, many of you all are colleagues, and I have the utmost respect for everybody on the floor as well. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any personal or guest announcements?
Madam Speaker, since we're on this,
Baltimore County.
thank you, Madam Speaker. I just need to say this. This is Love Month, right? It's still February, Love Month. Can we just love our neighbors? Let's put party aside. We don't agree on everything, but we must love one another. God bless you.
Personal or
Madam
guest
Speaker.
announcements? Yeah.
Madam Speaker.
Ja-
Madam Speaker.
Are you doing a
Yes.
guest announcement?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Something we can agree on. Today is District 9 Day. Permission to use the delegate's name, Madam
Permission
Speaker?
granted.
Delegate Courtney Watson and Delegate Wu, please join me in welcoming some guests from our notably nice 9th District in the gallery. Please stand up. And, oh, they're behind me, sorry. And give them a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County. Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to say the delegates' names?
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of Delegate McCaskill and Delegate Ebersol and I, we wanted to invite you to our district night for District 44, Monday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. At the Maryland Inn. And I wanted to thank Delegate McCaskill for all her work in organizing it.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't believe they're here with us now, but we have 37 students from the Chrisfield High School and Academy here in their government class with their teacher, Randy Laird, and I wanted to recognize them and hope we give good example to them to see how their government works today. Thank you.
No, they left. Hopefully so. Any other personal or guest announcements? Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to announce that the Irish Caucus celebration will take place on March 14th from 8 to 11 at Galway Bay. This year's Legislator of the Year is Senate President Ferguson, and the charity he has chosen is Teach for America Baltimore. Details will be in your mailbox next week. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That is Friday. Pages, front, center.
Come on down, you sunshines. Oh my goodness, what a week we've had. Oh my goodness, I hope that y'all had a good time today and you served all of your delegates well, because I saw you going up and down these aisles. Honey, you've been working. So that's why today is Friday, and we're going to make sure that we introduce you one more time, and y'all know the routine, right? Okay, here we go. Number one, Isabella Burrick, Washington County, District 2A, North Hagerstown High School. Brian Castro, Baltimore City, District 43A, the Reach Partnership High School. Alice Ulu, Baltimore County, District 11B, Delaney High School. Arjun Nair, Montgomery County, District 19, Poolsville High School. Rain Rivera Forbes, Prince George's County, District 22, Duval High School. Sahithia Sadaka, Carroll County, District 5, Liberty High School. Jessica White, Anne Arundel County, District 23, Archbishop Spalding High School. And family, David Yum, Charles County, District 28, Westlake High School. All right, you sunshines, thank you very much for this week. I appreciate, Madam Speaker, appreciate, and all of these delegates appreciate you too. So I want y'all to have a nice weekend. You may be excused. And don't forget all of you wonderful delegates that I love so well. Madam Speaker, we are almost there. I'm going to give you that. We're almost there. But I still need y'all to still come to see me in 205 for your protocol dues, which is important that you give it to me. I appreciate you. And y'all want y'all to have a nice, nice weekend. All of you. Thank you.
Okay. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands recessed until Monday, February 26th at 8 p.m.